All right. Welcome, everybody. I have one of my dear friends, Molly, with me today. She is a fellow Arvigo therapist, graduate from the Matrona, and Liz Cook mentee. I guess that's what we can call ourselves, students. Okay. We were together in January into February in New Mexico. And that training is the training that we're going to be resourcing for today's topic, which is stress and how we hold it in our muscular tissue, as well as I imagine you're going to pull from your craniosacral therapy background as well.
Yes.
Welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here with you, Danica. It's really fun because somehow independently we ended up studying a lot of the same things and coming to the work from the same inspiration and understanding of working with the body instead of trying to force the body to do things, which is really, really important.
And then you also have a beautiful place in my heart because you're so close to my family in New York. So you get to spoil them for me while I'm so far away.
Yeah, and I miss them too. And it's wonderful. It's just so nice to have that connection between the two of us.
Well, I'm going to let you start. So what brought you to the psoas? I'm assuming it started with craniosacral therapy, but maybe that's not the right answer.
No, that is exactly the right answer. I can't remember if it's the first class that I took in 1997 or the second one, craniosacral therapy 2, that I took in 1998. Upledger, which was the organization I was taking my classes with, always has a big book table with lots of stuff. And Liz Cook's psoas book was one of the books that I bought. And one of the things, I wish I had it right here where I could grab it. One of the things that I read about in that book was that the psoas, as Liz would prefer that we call it an organ, but as an entity in the body, wasn't just a piece of muscle that moved us around. It was a place in the body that was associated with emotion and stress response, fight or flight, not just from a mechanical piece, but in a deep being way. And someone like me who came to body work from reproductive health as a childbirth educator and a doula and someone who works with Fertility Challenge, that was really intriguing to me, that all of this housing of the emotional life was happening in the pelvis, not just around the uterus, but also in this muscle and how it helped us relate to the pelvis. To me, that was like, wow. So how about you? How did you come into relationship with the psoas?
Well, my original schooling education was at the Atlanta School of Massage, and I took the Asian Bodywork program. And so my foundation is in Tuina. And so that tissue was originally introduced to me through the energetic body, which included the adrenals that were sitting right there. And so my original introduction really also wasn't this mechanical, flexing muscle helps you walk, helps you do these things. It was about the energy or the chi flowing through the meridians. And then Liz's book has been an example, both from my original teachers and probably at least 95% of the trainings I've been to, it's always been a resource book. And so she's just followed me around for 18 years until I finally was like, okay, I'm listening, I'll go. And of course I've loved it. And, I was ready to hear the message when I arrived. So it was great.
Yeah, she's just really, she's such an iconoclast because she challenges our language. She challenges how we're looking at things. And I love how Liz Cook likes to position herself as an artist. She considers herself a performing artist in her relationship to the body. So she's not particularly interested in the different parts. She's interested in the expression of the whole. And at a time like this, with us experiencing once every 100 years, I hope, right? I hope we don't have to do this again for another 100 years. When we're experiencing a once in a very long lifetime event like this, that is incredibly challenging to our being, you know, and it's profoundly affected our work, our emotional life, how we're using our bodies. Like the way I use my body every day is nothing like I would normally use my body when I was working on a regular basis. And just the atmosphere of existential angst, right? We're being met with a possibly life-ending threat that's strange and unusual to us. Being able to tap into knowing how the body responds to that kind of stress, knowing that my senses are creating an environment where I want to go into the fetal curl, and how my psoas is involved with that, really allows me to have a lot of compassion for how I find my body sometimes. That this trying to maintain ideal posture and functional movement is a little more challenging because the psoas is sensing all of this stuff that's going on.
I've noticed it when I do have to go out into public, this armoring that is happening around the psoas. And for those that don't know, this tissue is located deep, deep within our abdomen and attaches along our spine and goes through our pelvis and then attaches into our leg, and our adrenals sit right up against that tissue. Look at you and your props. and that's where I feel it. It's like a gut punch going in the store, and I have to stop and ground and take a couple breaths and go, is this me? Or is it the other people in the store? Is there a collective anxiety in the store that when I walk in, I start to then own as if it's my own? Because, you know, I'm trying to breathe through a mask that's not easy to breathe through. And then I'm starting to guard and brace, and I just have to be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be deep breaths. I do not need all the beans.
Or all the toilet paper, or all of the paper towels, which up here now we've got plenty of those things. The supply chain is caught back up. But it was very interesting again to watch how that manifests in behavior. You know, like if I have these things, then I'll be safer. And the body motions that go with if I have these things, right? Coming in like that. So how do you bring yourself back out?
Well, in the moment in the store, I'm just doing a lot of breath work, which of course is moving the diaphragm, which is helping the upper psoas tissue as well. It's getting that massage, and it's just like I don't need to lock myself in place. One of my favorite things has actually been the ball on the sacrum, where the ball's on the wall, which is really helping to open up the heart space. And I guess for me, I usually feel when my psoas is activated, I feel it more in the upper. Like that's where I feel it the first. So that's where I'm trying to nurture and love. Love. And I notice that I just am finding fetal curl in my sleep subconsciously. There's a lot of fetal curling going on in my sleep, for sure. How about you?
Well, I have to be really careful that I don't try to force my body back into what I think it's supposed to be doing, right? So when we think about, you know, what does the body do when it's in fight or flight? You know, we contract our pec minors, we bring our traps up like this, and then one of the things that we do is the second camera thing. I don't think is going to work for me. One of the things we do is we go into a crouch, right? So we contract through here, and so there's a part of me that wants to just, you know, stand up, have my ballerina posture, tuck my tail, and stretch all of this through here. Just tell my body, you know, you should feel safe now. Let all of this get long. But what I love about what we were doing in New Mexico was now what my initial response is, no, just go into the fetal curl. Like, just let it all go into that, and then acknowledge, oh, for the first time in my life, the grocery store is not a comfortable, safe place to be. I don't particularly like shopping, but we have these wonderful stores up here called Wegmans. And I'm sorry.
My favorite store in the whole world.
And that's it. So for those of us who've lived in, you know, grew up in Rochester, lived other places, then you come back, it's like, oh, I'm in Wegmans again. Like, I've had that experience of just loving my grocery store. So it's very bizarre to go into the place, which is kind of like my home base, and to feel what you were describing, this immediate scare, like the people, the surfaces, everything is dangerous in here, instead of like, I'm in Wegmans with the beautiful vegetable and fruit display. So I have to allow myself to come fully into that fetal curl and allow myself to really feel, wow, I am so activated right now. Like, my whole body is having this reaction. And then I have to be really honest with myself and say, is there some, you know, this is what I always, the thing I always go through is there something to be frightened of here? And for the first time in Wegmans, the answer is yes, right? Like, yeah, there could be someone who just walked through here and coughed. That's why I'm wearing my mask. And then I have to say to myself, have I done everything that I can do to take care of myself? Am I doing all the safe things? Oh, yeah, I am. I sanitized my hands, and I'm doing all my things on my phone so that I can basically check out just by scanning something at the door before I leave. It's a really safe process. And then as I feel that, my body will start to come back up again. And so that my desire to protect that solar plexus that you were talking about, now my solar plexus can come out and be exposed because it feels it's okay to be exposed, instead of because it should, right? I don't have to should on myself. I can be all right, letting my core vibrate out into the world. Does that answer your question?
One of the things that I'm gonna somehow need an abbreviation on a bracelet, because I want to remember it in the moment of the trigger. Is I think it was in the psoas book. I've read all three. I'm pretty sure it was in the psoas book specifically. And Liz talks about how when you go and you start to work on your tissue and you're going to unwind your tissue, you don't do it by stretching and pulling. She uses a knot in a shoelace as the example, and that you go into the knot and you work with the knot to get it to unwind, instead of trying to like pull on it until it does what you want it to do. And your description of allowing your body to go through that process in the grocery store reminds me of the knot in the shoelace, that you go into it and you work with it, and then you're like, oh, okay, I can stand up now, instead of being like, you should be standing up, because as we know, it just stretches and creates tension. It's not juicy, healthy, vibrant tissue.
Right, right.
We're just depriving it of its life by trying to force it into an ideal position.
Which, if you think about too, her example of the sponge, Liz talks a lot about hydration and how the body needs to be well hydrated. And I don't use a real word. I use the word plumpy, that all of our tissues need to be plumpy. And by that, I mean that they've got a little bounce to them, that they've got a lot of fluid in them, that fluid can move in and out of them really well. And a muscle that has conflict, I want to be contracted, but I'm being pulled apart, isn't going to have that resilience. It isn't going to be plumpy. It's not going to be well hydrated. And it's that gentle back and forth of squishing. I'm thinking of, when you've got a whole bunch of small chain necklaces that are all wrapped around each other. You kind of have to squish them together before you can start pulling the little pieces apart. And it's the same thing where when you allow, from a musculoskeletal kind of verbiage, when you allow the fibers of the muscle to come in, it gives them a little more room, and they can reorganize until they feel like they can, this is what positional release is, right? You allow the muscle to contract a little bit, come to a place of rest, and then it can kind of work itself out into something that has more vibrancy. So that's the beauty too, is that all of Liz's poetic language has basis in the biology and the physiology of how these things work. It's not like she's coming from a totally crazy point of view, but the way that her words are used around it creates a space for us to be gentle and not should on ourselves and allow the things to move and change. One of the challenges for me when I first learned about constructive rest, I was like, what do you mean I can just lay here and do nothing and my psoas will release? When we're taught that, getting the psoas released is hard work. There are all these manipulative things you can do and these stretches, you got to stay on it. And that's it. When I tell my clients, really, you just have to do this simple thing. You have to be patient. You have to lay there for 15 to 20 minutes. But if you're patient, it'll happen on its own. That just goes directly against the no pain, no gain way that we're taught to think about the body, right?
So while we're talking about it, why don't we demonstrate? Do you want to show what constructive rest looks like?
I love how I'm learning all of this stuff kind of on the fly.
Well, we kind of all are, aren't we, right now? Yeah. There's never been so much grace for imperfection in the world. That's such a great benefit to being in a pandemic is somehow we're all allowed to be human now.
I've been doing these virtual doula prenatals, with couples who are expecting their babies. And here I am, I don't have a partner. I'm trying to demonstrate to them how to use the rebozo and do all it's inherently, you have to work with it as a forgiving process and just gives us permission to play a little bit. So there are two different ways to do constructive rest. The first, like some people would have a yoga mat underneath them. I don't usually dress like a mime, but I thought it would be easier to see things if I was all in black. But if I was on my yoga mat or just here on the floor, I've got a nice rug. But a yoga mat is nice because then my feet wouldn't slide. They would feel stable here. And my legs are just comfortably like this. And I hang out for a while. And I feel I can investigate if I want to. I can investigate how this feels, or I can ignore it. I tell the young mommies that I work with, read a book to your kid, watch something on TV with them, just be in this posture. Sometimes, though, they can't really get restful here. So I will tell them, to grab a chair. And the important thing is that there's a right angle here and a right angle there. And this is extra super restful. There's no effort here at all. And same thing, I can read to my child, I can watch TV, I can have an after dinner chat with my spouse. The important thing is I have shortened the psoas, which starts here, right above my belly button, and goes to the inside of my thigh. I've shortened it so that it can be at rest. That's why we call it constructive rest. And it doesn't have to do any work at all. And it can kind of play with itself. And sometimes you can feel it. You can feel it kind of not sure what to do or how to be because it's used to working so hard all the time. And then eventually it'll just give way. Anything else you want to point out, Danica?
Because we both work a lot also with the prenatal demographic, do you have some cushions there to show what it looks like pregnant? If not, I have a video that I pre-recorded.
I forgot to get that out. My wedge is right in here.
Okay.
But no, you know what? I think the video would be good.
Yeah. Why don't I pull the video up and let me see. There we go. I had to text it to myself. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I can make this go big. Okay. So I am using cushions. Molly, can you tell me if you can see my browser thing moving around?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is the back of a chair. This is a yoga bolster. This is a throw pillow. And so this, I just stacked them to kind of make an angle. I tried to find things I already had around the house.
Because that's what people are going to have, right?
Right. Yeah. And then this particular one is more yoga-like. I have the knees out and the feet together, which is going to shorten. So if you're tight, let's see how I get out of here. And then I have this still shot. I guess it's not really going to get big. Which is the same thing with my knees bent the way yours were. And then, of course, the next variation would be to put them on the chair.
Mm-hmm.
I find the more props, the harder it is, though, to get in and out. So you have to be you have to have enough movement to be able to kind of like tuck and roll out. Mm-hmm. But if you're somebody like me, or you kind of feel that engagement happening first in the top portion, you might find, even if you're not pregnant, that being on an incline kind of, like you said, we're going into the curl a little and giving it some space. And then maybe the next time I come to the pillow, I take a layer out and I explore, what does that look like? And the chair would be something if I feel that engagement more in my lower, where I'm like, how do I, again, kind of go into that, not feel like I have to hold my legs, even though I wouldn't need to if I wasn't engaged when I started the process.
Well, and I'm going to show one more thing, just because I think sometimes watching someone do something that you think is kind of weird for people to do is always helpful. So if it really feels like there's a lot of tension through here and through here, like everything's just kind of bunched up, there's absolutely nothing wrong with coming into a full fetal curl.
Right.
You know, and just being here. You know, like, I think we have this cultural, well, we use it as a joke, right? Oh, I went full fetal. I was so stressed. I was, you know, but sometimes that is exactly what we need to do. Got a little yoga bolster here for my head. Is to just curl up and notice, how does this feel? Oh, this feels kind of weird. Like, I can't believe I'm giving myself permission to do this. Okay, that's interesting. And then like, my body's kind of having a little sigh of relief here. Like, oof, you finally gave me the thing I've been looking for. And what's interesting is, if you're not going to stay here forever,
Right.
when the body starts to resource itself, you're like, oh, I can bring my legs out a little bit. And now I can start to make a little space. And if you live in my house with 2 cats and a dog, and the door isn't closed, you know, the pets start to come around. If you've got kids, they start to come around. And those resources start to become more apparent, and maybe even organically a little stretch up this way, you know, and it doesn't feel like you're fighting for it. It's like the body saying, okay, I can do this now. And it doesn't feel like it's a battle. It's more like a relief. Ooh, that feels nice, you know? So I just wanted to actually show someone going into the fetal position without like heading off the psychiatric ward. It's okay to do that, to give your body a sense of safety and protection. And you don't have to stay there for hours. 5 minutes to do it.
So what are some of the more active ways of working with the tissue that do you love to do? What are your favorites?
Well, I like a good yoga practice that moves my legs and pelvis around, that is very gentle and uses props. You know, I have done hot power vinyasa classes, and those are interesting, but I have to be very careful with those because they can make me feel like I'm pushing my body to do things. A slower class that really works through, you know, a pigeon pose in a very slow, careful way, that can be really nice. I like the work with balls. Mm-hmm. The little ball. I don't have any of the little balls up here. My little balls are downstairs, but I love working with these balls. What are some of the things that you like to do, Danica?
I also love, mine's more deflated than yours.
This one's too full, right? Like, you never work with it that full.
I mean, this kind of is too when you think about it. We've been doing some of our schoolwork on the trampoline, and so it's been interesting because I just, like, the other day I was deflating the beach ball, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, stuck it under my head, and I was like, "Ugh." And we have a set of all of the tiny ones to work on your feet in the living room, so that at any point anybody can pick something up and work with their feet and stimulate the entire bottom of their foot so they can have more proprioception. Is that a golf ball? Yeah, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's perfect. Oh, we've got a question. Can you show ball placement? Do you want to show with the golf ball?
Sure. Let me put my computer on the floor here. So this is like a classic. When we go to bodywork conferences, this is something that they love to do. They'll give someone a ball, any kind of ball, tennis ball, golf ball, and have that person, they'll just say, okay, and until I tell you to stop, just run it back and forth on your foot like this. And the person may not have ever done it before, so they have no idea what this is going to do. So they go back and forth, and as you see, I'm just going up and down my foot. If you really want to get fancy with this, and you intentionally go along the outside of the foot. Make sure that you come up and go back and forth across the ball. You know, you try to get all the different structures. The plantar fascia that we talk about with plantar fasciitis is this piece in here. So rubbing along there. But what's wild about doing this is I'm just rubbing my foot, but there's something about softening the fascia on the bottom of the foot that when I stand up and I go to stretch my calf, if I did a calf stretch now, my calf would be easier to stretch. We should have done it before and after. And my whole back line and my hamstrings all the way up to my ischial tuberosity here. And this is the part where it's really hard to get a good stretch. But doing ball work with your foot will actually stretch the upper part of the hamstring. It releases the connective tissue of the upper part of the hamstring. Because once you start releasing connective tissue, all the neighbors soften too. It's not just where you're working. So that's how I would play with the ball on the bottom of the foot. How about you, Danica?
I love how you demonstrated that, because I don't know that I've ever been that rigorous. And the idea of using a golf ball, even because it's going to be, I did find I have one of my tiny ones in here. It's going to have more sensory input with the firmness of the golf ball compared to this one. If I were to use my hand and pretend it's the foot, we spend a lot of time just kind of pressing onto the floor and pressing and moving and pressing and moving. And then with this tiny one under every toe, you know, maybe the baby toe and the one next to it at the same time. And so if I spend a good, 3 presses on all the spots, when I put my foot down on the ground after, it just feels more connected.
Yeah.
And I feel more grounded, and I can feel it through my whole body. It's not just my foot feels more grounded. My leg feels more grounded. My pelvis feels more grounded. My torso feels more grounded. So that's a definite when people in my house, myself included, are starting to not be grounded. It's like, okay, let's let's go get the things out.
And that's, that feeling of being grounded comes from that, again, that buoyancy. It's not just a down, it's a, I was reading in a yoga book the other day, the opposing forces of the up and the down. The fact that the energy, again, from the Chinese medicine perspective, that we're pulling energy up from the earth and down from the stars at the same time. And they're going in and out of all the different channels. When all of that is working well, we have this sense of buoyancy, of things being well hydrated, of having some resilience. And when the central nervous system doesn't feel like it has resilience, it starts to feel really stiff. So whether it's bouncing on the balls or rolling the ball back and forward, like what speaks to your body's sense of, I've got some movement now, that resilience will start to move through the whole system. Like I said, because it's all neighbors.
Right. And so a great little mini series would be that, you would maybe start in this constructive rest or the fetal curl, spend some time there, and then maybe do some footwork and get grounded. And then, maybe do some breath work, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be strategic, just conscious that you're breathing. I mean, we can call in any kind of breath work training or activity that we like, but it's really not bringing it back to being birth workers. And people think I'm going to teach them how to breathe in labor. I'm like, no, I'm just going to remind you to breathe. I just don't want you to hold your breath. I don't really care. Other than that, you're going to find what works for you. So same thing. It doesn't really matter how you do it. Just do it.
Yeah, well, and the idea of, there's some simple cues that, again, work with the physiology if you want to clue into that part, which is if you make your out breath a little longer than your in breath, then our safety sensing systems get engaged a little bit easier. That is an easy way to play with the breath and to notice what's happening with the breath without getting too caught up in crazy counting or anything like that.
Right.
And sometimes if someone is feeling like their breath is hard for them to kind of, some of us haven't been breathing in a healthful or um, we haven't been breathing in a resilient way for decades. Mm-hmm. I certainly didn't breathe well for a really long time. So having just one small simple thing to play with was helpful for me instead of trying to, okay, I'm going to learn how to breathe. I was breathing, but I just needed some ways to breathe a little better at first. And then we have these balls. Mm-hmm. So the other training that Danica and I have both done is the Spinning Babies body worker training. So we know a lot about working with pregnant mamas, both from our Vigo work and the other work, but also the Spinning Babies stuff. And I have, these are like $10 on Amazon or something. The Gertie balls. Mm-hmm. And what's cool about these is that you just take out the little inflator bit and you can stick it back in, and so you can make these floppy as well as all stiff, and then you can use it. I'm not going to go to the wall because there's no way for me to film that really well, but if I was up against the wall, I love this. This is really, when it comes to working with balls, this is my favorite thing. I put this against the wall, and then I can kind of roll my sternum around on the ball. And for me, that really helps to open up this part of the chest. And when these muscles called the pectoralis minor, which are the ones that bring the shoulders in this way, when that part of my body is curled in that fetal curl really strongly, that means that the upper part of my psoas, which is what you were talking about, Danica, right around the navel, it means all of me is curling around that, so the solar plexus, and I can really get stuck here. And if I do some ball work around this, I can start some softening through here. And it's like that my sternum starts to move out this way without me pushing at it. It's amazing. Such a simple thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's one of my favorite too. And then a very popular one while I've been home with the kids is from kids yoga and putting the toy on the belly and just being like, when you breathe, make the toy move. Mm-hmm. So, we may not all have toys in our house, but we have something we can put on our stomach to kind of use as a gauge of when I'm breathing. Am I just breathing using the tiny muscles around my ribs, or am I actually getting full breath with the diaphragm?
Right.
So that's been a popular one, is to get the favorite stuffed animal and stick it on the belly and be like, okay. And it kind of gets them in constructive breath at the same time because their knees are bent and they just don't even know that it's happening. So there's ways to sneak it in. They're not going to do it for 20 minutes, but I might get 5.
Well, and again, that importance of not shooting on yourself. Yeah. Like, okay, if you get 5, that's 5 more minutes than you would have gotten if you hadn't done it. Maybe you'll get 5 more minutes later in the day. It doesn't all have to be at once. It's little doses of nurturing in those islands where you didn't even know that you could take that 5 minutes before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left. Does anybody have any additional questions that we can address before we start to wrap it up? Liz has a really great book that has a lot of different explorations in it. I wish I had it home to hold up the title and show you. It's in my office in Charleston.
I'll get it.
Okay, awesome. It's my favorite out of the three that I have from her. And I think mostly for that reason. There's a lot of great different activities in it. The fetal curl is in there, the active rest, the sacral opener that we just demoed is also in there.
Yeah. So you're talking about awareness,
yeah.
Right? And then this is the psoas books. I mean,
that was her first one.
So much great information. And then there's this one. And then she also has Stalking Wild Psoas, which is the more philosophical. What would it be like if we were living from a different awareness of our body and how we relate to the world? A lot of really cool, interesting thoughts in here. But the nuts and bolts are here.
Yeah. So I have a question. How does this psoas fit into the Arvigo practice? Great question. I know, we both went, what? Do you want to take it? You want me to take it?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we could both I'm sure we'll have a slightly different perspective. When I think of how they work together, I think of how when we are doing the Arvigo protocol, we're moving all of the systems. So we're encouraging the lymphatic system, the circulatory system, the energetic system, I'm missing a system. So what happens when I put myself on the spot? It'll come to me. And so part of that, so I do say circulatory instead of venous and arterial, so maybe that's why, because I combine them into one. And so as we're moving the life forces of those systems, it's going to nurture the psoas muscle. It also is going to encourage the vagal response as we do the work, which a side effect will be calming the adrenals and the psoas. It's not working the psoas in a mechanical way, like to go to somebody and say, will you work my psoas? And they're, go at this angle below your belly button. And, it can often be pretty uncomfortable to get that work. It's not accessing it in that mechanical way where you're going in and trying to manipulate the tissue. I don't know about you, Molly. I don't do that anymore. In the beginning of my 18-year practice, I did approach it in a more mechanical way, but it's been probably 10 years since I've approached it in a mechanical way on my table. It took me a little longer to release, like giving lunge stretches for homework. That probably took another 7 years for me to let go. When I started to realize that was also mechanical, I was like, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so part of the Arvigo self-care can do that as well, because it will be nurturing the adrenal system regardless of the psoas. And if the adrenals are not being charged, then the psoas doesn't become the messenger of the stress.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
Well, so it's important from my perspective, I got into body work because of craniosacral therapy. And so my initial interaction with actually treating the body was that I was holding the sacrum, or I was holding the pelvis and just allowing, it's right from the very beginning. It wasn't a manipulative thing. I had to go to massage school to get my license. So I knew how to release a psoas manually, but I knew I didn't want to do that work. And my experience was that if I just held my hands here with the connective tissue, that the connective tissue would melt and flow and would be very easily encouraged to go in different directions. And what that does is it allows, like you said, the 5 flows, the arterial, the venous, the lymph, the nerves, and the energetic flows all through the pelvis to work better. So if we think about, so if a person was standing, this is how their pelvis is. It's more of a cornucopia than a bowl. So it's like this. And when we're working on the belly with the Arvigo work, we are, the psoas comes from up here and inserts on the inside of the thigh down here. So it's coming from right in front of the spine, in the front of the spine, through the deepest part of the abdomen and then over the pelvis. So as we're doing these very gentle strokes through here, we're soothing it. And then if you go to an Arvigo practitioner like me and Danica, we're doing work back here that's working on the nerves of the central nervous system and the connective tissue of the whole back of the pelvis that's going to actually soothe the signals going to the psoas so that the psoas feels like it doesn't have to work so hard. And again, it's not so much that we're going to make the psoas do anything as create an environment in which the psoas feels that it can rest, that it doesn't have to be fighting to keep us safe, that it can find a way to be in relationship to the spine, the pelvis, and the legs that allows for optimal circulation. If the psoas muscles are really tight, they actually form what I call bowling bumpers. It just makes it hard for everything to move around in here. And especially if we have a growing baby coming this way, the baby can run up against those bumpers and cause positional problems and blah, 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 blah. But when everything is soft and plumpy and resilient, everything through here moves better. And yeah, the Arvigo protocols are ideal for that. And then you combine that with cranial work, and I just feel like those things go together really nicely.
Right. Thank you for showing the world I'm not the only one who has pelvis models at arm's distance reach. So if I show mine, I can actually, I have legs.
Ooh, nice.
So this is where the psoas attaches.
Yeah.
Kind of back here. So it comes down and through and then attaches right here. So you can imagine when you are moving your legs out for that video I showed with my knees out and my feet together, that it's taking this tissue and it's stretching the tissue out. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. I can see it better from behind. So that little, it's that little nodule right there. It's where it inserts into the leg. I like that yours had little, you had things back here on yours.
Oh yeah, it has the,
what did you have back there?
And these ligaments that I'm always looking
nice.
for people. Yeah.
That's cool. That's great.
Love all the teaching.
I know, right? I'm a little addicted to them. Well, Molly, I wanted to say thank you so much for spending this hour with us. I know that you've got lots going on in your household, and it's been wonderful to have you. Thank you for hanging out.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Danica, truly. Thank you so much.
If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way that they can reach out? How would you like them to reach out to you?
Go to my website.
Okay.
It's Spirit Organic, and so it's all one word, spiritorganic.net. And if you write down my name, Molly Deutschbein, one of the benefits of having a name like that is there's only one of me in the entire world. So type in Deutschbein, I'll pop right up. But my website is spiritorganic.net, and you can get a hold of me any number of ways from there. And
all right.
That's it. We have a little extra time on our hands right now. So if you have any questions, please reach out.
Like, now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Molly. This was great.